Wish you all a good morning and welcome. Let me begin also by thanking the sponsors of today's event, Representatives Joe Baca and Mario Diaz-Balart, as well as the Congressional Hispanic Caucus Institute and the Congressional Hispanic Leadership Institute. We very much appreciate your continued support and interest in the work of the IDB in promoting the social and economic development of Latin America and the Caribbean, a region that is very vital to the United States' national interest. And we especially appreciate the Congress's support of the capital increase of the IDB, which has enabled the United States to maintain and underscore its leadership in this very important regional institution. The $510 million in paid-in capital commitment on the part of the U.S. over 5 years will lead to a doubling of lending to the region, or an additional $50 billion in financing activities over the next 10 years. And as a result of these investments, we would expect our neighbors in Latin America and the Caribbean to enjoy greater economic growth, which should translate into higher demand for U.S. goods and services. As the United States Executive Director at the IDB, I am thrilled to gather here today to discuss the role of youth in promoting private sector development in Latin America and the Caribbean, and to hear about what the Multilateral Investment Fund, or the MIF, of the IDB is doing to promote youth employment and entrepreneurship. As the largest provider of technical assistance for private sector development in Latin America and the Caribbean, the MIF plays a distinct role in pursuit of innovative ways to build economic opportunity and reduce poverty, particularly by focusing on micro and small enterprises. And over the course of its nearly 20-year history, the MIF has approved more than 1,700 projects, committed more than $1.5 billion, and mobilized, together with other providers of capital, a total of more than $2.7 billion to the region. The United States government is a strong and active supporter of private sector development in Latin America and the Caribbean, and the MIF's strongest advocate, having helped establish the fund in 1993. The United States appreciates the direct impact the MIF has on strengthening the region's private sector, particularly with regard to micro and small enterprises. In terms of youth employment and entrepreneurship, the MIF has funded more than 120 projects since 1994 and trained approximately 235,000 poor and low-income youth in 24 countries with an aggregate investment of more than $77 million. Nancy Lee, who's sitting to my left, is the general manager of the MIF, and I should also note the former Deputy Assistant Secretary for the Western Hemisphere at Treasury, where she had a distinguished career of more than 25 years. Along with the rest of the MIF team gathered here today, we'll be presenting a detailed overview of the MIF's work in youth employment and entrepreneurship. They will also provide details of the newly released MIF publication, Give Youth a Chance, an Agenda for Action. But first, let me turn the floor over to Mr. Andrew Baird, the Senior Economic Growth Specialist at RTI International, an independent research firm headquartered in North Carolina. Over the last 18 months, Mr. Baird conducted an evaluation of MIF's youth work and will present a brief overview of his findings. Thank you again for joining us today on this important discussion.
Great. Thank you very much. And it's a privilege to be here today. And I want to thank the IDB and the MIF for inviting me to come and share just a few of the findings that came from the study that we conducted over the last 18 months. I should preface this by saying that when this study began, we thought that this would probably be a 3 to 6 month effort. What we found was that there was so much depth of material and richness out there that it took us 18 months to sift through all of the findings and put together this particular study. So most of what we're going to do today is going to be looking forward, but we thought it would be worthwhile just to take a few minutes to take a look backwards and look at some of the foundations that this new strategy is built upon. The study was a thematic study of the youth programming in entrepreneurship and employment projects. 20 different projects were selected out of more than 100 to review. We looked at projects in 11 different countries and conducted over 250 interviews with program participants, with program implementers, partners, employers around Latin America, conducted dozens of focus groups. So some of the key findings, and we have some slides up to your right that go over some of these. I'm going to begin with looking at the employment programs. The most effective programs that we found in the youth portfolio took a very holistic approach, and by that, what we found was that these programs employed a number of different strategies, providing technical skills training, life skills training, practical training opportunities like internships, mentorship, counseling services, and psychosocial support. Interestingly, as programs evolved, they seemed to come to this conclusion almost organically. When programs didn't start that way in the beginning, 3-4 years from now, you could see components being added onto them. And so what we found very consistently across many of the programs was this holistic approach. What we didn't find consistently was the mix of how much technical skills versus how much life training versus internships. And that's still something that's being looked at. Another interesting thing which emerged from this was that the life skills portion of this was the most highly valued. This we found true 90% plus of the employers who were interviewed for this study indicated that that was the number one value that they saw coming from the employees that they were bringing in from the MIF-supported programs were the life skills. And by that I mean knowing how to dress for work, understanding the value of showing up on time, kind of those basic employment skills. We also found this to be true from the perspective of the youth, that they felt that that was one of the most important skills that they were learning and was transferable. Engaging employers throughout the program, and that sounds somewhat obvious, but not all of the programs did it, but those that did it the best seemed to have the most consistently high results. So bringing employers in to understand what types of skills were needed and really targeting their particular needs. And finally, job placement skills was another finding that where those were present, they had some of the highest success rates for employment. Turning quickly here to the entrepreneurship programs. In similar fashion, those programs that were providing a depth of services, technical training in things like accounting and marketing and business skills, but also things like negotiation skills and public speaking skills also were very, very valued. Long-term support, and this is one that I think became very obvious, is that youth entrepreneurs need long-term support, particularly those that are starting from the most disadvantaged positions. And that support can come in many forms, sometimes coaching, mentorship, but increasingly looking to private and public sector partnerships to be able to provide that long-term support was something that we saw as being very effective. The selection of participants, and this is one that receives a lot of attention around the world, is how do you pick your program participants? How do you select those who are most likely to be successful entrepreneurs? And so there are lots of different strategies for doing so, and what we found was that those that did have a funnel and a screening process had higher rates of success than those who did not. And finally, both the non-financial types of support, the business training, the coaching, the mentoring, but also providing financial support or opportunities for loans, financing the startup of enterprises was very important. However, we found it most effectively done when the institutions were separated. There appeared conflicts of interest and other risks associated with having both of those functions together, and typically the institutions were good at one and not so good at another. Very quickly here, just a few lessons learned looking forward. retaining youth is crucial to the success of these programs. And in order to do that, programs need to be very targeted towards their needs, dynamic, interactive, things which would keep youth interested really anywhere. Another lesson learned was that programs need to focus very explicitly on issues surrounding young women's participation in these programs, safety issues being among the most important. Another, again, somewhat obvious but challenging area that I think we'll hear more about here is engaging youth in the design and implementation. And this was not done as explicitly in some cases as we think would be effective for these programs. Where it's done, I think we found great result. Achieving scale, of course, the goal for the MIF very often is to be piloting innovative programs to gather these lessons learned and then for look to ways to scale this up. And some of the most effective ways that we saw that happening was where partnerships were being built with private sector and public sector institutions. So whether it's school systems or government ministries or large employers in the country. And finally, I think one of the challenges that we faced in looking at all of these different programs was the lack of a common metric to be able to evaluate and gather information. And I think going forward that this is an important thing, is to understand exactly what it is that we're measuring so that programs can conform to those metrics and be able to compare apples to apples across different contexts and different regions. Again, I think what we found was an enormous richness in the experience that the MIF has had in its programming, and great foundations to build the next generation of programming. So we're excited to hear what's coming up. And on that note, I'm going to turn it over to Nancy Lee, the General Manager, the MIF.
Thanks so much, Andrew, and thanks, Gustavo, and my thanks also to Representative Baca and Representative Diaz-Balart, and to the Congressional Hispanic Caucus and the Congressional Hispanic Leadership Institute. I'm really delighted so many of you were able to join us today, because for us at the Multilateral Investment Fund, this is an important moment, maybe even a defining moment in our quest as an institution for excellence, as a development institution, and really particularly our pursuit of evidence-based resource allocation. Because this week marks the end of a process in which we have taken stock of nearly 20 years of work on training youth for entry-level jobs and for starting businesses. and it also is the week where we launched our course for the future in cooperation with our partners. About 18 years ago, the Multilateral Investment Fund decided to place a bet on youth, in effect, and in particular on the importance of economic inclusion of youth. And at that period, most of the focus on youth was more on the social side of the set of issues, not on the potential of youth, the economic potential of youth, and in particular, the effect of failure to include youth on economic performance, that a failure to empower youth for jobs and business creation could actually have a significant effect on economic growth. So I have to give our predecessors at the MIF credit for that really prescient understanding. They decided to test a proposition, which was, is it possible to design relatively short, efficient, and effective training interventions that really correct fundamental skill deficits, fundamental inability of youth to to demonstrate the skills for entry-level job and an inability to really start their own businesses. So this is if for youth that have dropped out of school or have completed secondary education and don't have the skills, could you intervene in a relatively low-cost way to correct that deficit? That was the proposition to be tested, and it was, at that point, just an hypothesis. It was by no means certain that this would be possible. So we basically spent nearly 20 years working on refining ways to correct those skill deficits. The bets that we placed were large. Some of our largest, or the largest grants we ever have done as an institution are in this area of our work. And about a year and a half ago, we decided very consciously to step back from doing more projects and take a concerted look back, a deep dive. And we decided to engage with RTI, as Andrew was describing, because we wanted an outside set of experts to take a look at our work, unbiased set of experts, to determine in a very rigorous way what really the lessons of what we've done are. And this week we launched our strategy, as Gustavo mentioned, which is called Give Youth a Chance, an Agenda for Action. So I'm going to give you in a nutshell what we've learned over 20 years of work, so in order to be efficient in imparting that knowledge to you. But before I do that, I just wanted to say something about our partners, because we could not have done this without the executing agencies that we had. I think we have Paul here from Partners of the Americas, and I think we have Peter from the International Youth Foundation back there. Had we not had the quality of partners and our team inside the Multilateral Investment Fund, the answer to that question, is it possible, might have been no. And since we've gathered here today, you can be assured the answer is yes. First, let me just say a little bit about what the MIF is, because it may not be familiar to all of you. This is the largest fund within the Inter-American Development Bank. We have 39 donors, countries. The largest donors are the United States and Japan and Canada and Spain and China, but all of the countries in the region are also members of our fund. We are a laboratory, and we were formed to be a laboratory, very unusual in development institutions. From the very beginning, we were supposed to take risks, we were supposed to innovate, we were supposed to try new things, and you'll see that that's critical to the work we did in this sphere. But we're not supposed to just experiment, do little experiments without achieving systemic impact. When we find models that work, our job is then to help others scale them up, another key part of our work here. We also, by mandate, focused on poor and low-income populations. We are organized not by sectors or by region, but by tools. Our job is to provide our clients tools like access to finance and markets and skills and basic services in order to empower them to raise their incomes. We're on the ground. 45% of our staff is in the region. And we provide grants, equity, and loans, and that combination is also very unusual. There are not many development institutions that can do all three, and our ability to combine those tools in different combinations is critical to our effectiveness. We measure part of our success by leverage. We always work with partners. We never work alone. We need partners to help us implement, but we also need partners to help us fund. And in 2011, for every $1 we approve, we mobilize $4 from other partners. So, just to start with the challenges for youth in this region. Like other parts of the developing world, it's a young region, and it's one of the youngest regions. There are about 148 million youth. 1 in 5 is without a job, is not in education, and it is not in a training program. So when we hear later from our program beneficiaries, you will see that what we find a lot of times is that youth literally are at home or idle. They are really outside of any productive activity. And even those youth who are working, half of them are in informal jobs. So you have informality, underemployment, and unemployment. But that exists side by side with employers struggling to find qualified workers. So you have this paradox of people seeking jobs and people wanting to hire and not being able to match each other. 41% of the employers struggle to find qualified workers. In some countries, it's much higher than that. For example, in Brazil, it's 71% of employers. Employers, as we heard Andrew mention, particularly are interested in life skills, and those turn out to be the hardest to find in entry-level employees. When I say we've done 18 years of work, this gives you a sense of the magnitude of this work. We've done 120 projects. We've reached 235,000 youth, and we have ourselves approved $77 million in resources and mobilize $125 million from others. You can see from this map that we've worked all over the region, in large and small countries, and in middle income and low income countries, and that ability to kind of compare experience in different countries has turned out to be critical. So this is 18 years of work. This is the model that we think works best, and Andrew has already pretty much summarized what is in that model. It's a kind of compound intervention with 6 components. One component is the assessment at the beginning of what employers want and what youth wants. Then there's the life skills training component. And life skills, as Andrew was saying, are a combination of a number of things. They are basic literacy and numeracy skills, basic computer literacy in the 21st century, but they are also personal skills that enable anybody to function within an organization productively. It's teamwork, it's communication, it's a level of self-esteem that empowers you, it's respect, it's reliability. And so those things we found are the single most important preoccupation of employers seeking to hire people for entry-level jobs. Then there's a technical training component, which is customized based on the jobs available in that community. Internships are key, very familiar here on the Hill, but it's not very familiar in Latin America. It's obvious that internships are useful for the youth that graduate from these programs, but it's not so obvious to employers that internships are useful. So we had to create a value proposition to them to show them that by having these youth be employed in short-term internships, they can actually test whether this training has merit. Job placement skills, we found you must integrate that into the program. You can't have 2 steps where you do the training and then later you do the job placement. It's got to be an iterative process where the job placement keeps feeding back into the training. And then finally, measuring output is key, and I'll come back to that in a minute. On the entrepreneurship side, similarly, 6 pieces to the puzzle. Diagnostics at the beginning of youth needs, and also screening for who to choose for these programs. I'll come back to that. Business plan preparation. We found that business plans are actually useful as a means more than as an end. In other words, they're a way to either screen people for then subsequent interventions, or they're a way to train people. But the end of the program is the creation of the business, not the creation of the business plan. Business and entrepreneurship training similarly have to include a number of components, and there's a life skill component there as well. Non-financial services, mentoring and coaching are key, and the mentor has to be somebody who's actually started a business. Turns out somebody who has a job in a corporation is not a particularly useful mentor to somebody who's really trying to start a business. Financial services, giving these young people the startup finance is clearly key. And I have to say, this is an area where no one has done very well, including us. We need to do better in the future. And then measuring outcomes. So, quick results slide. This is, again, summarizing all of this work in one slide. In our employment training models, for the Entra 21 and the Aganar model, we trained a total of over almost 140,000 youth, and over time achieved placement rates in jobs of 50 to 70%, which for this population is a very good outcome. The training programs average between about 550 and 850 hours. That's about maybe 4 to 6 months if the training is full-time. So that gives you a sense. These are pretty short training programs, and the cost per student is quite low. The average cost is $1,000. On the entrepreneurship side, nearly 4,000 youth trained in 2 of our best programs. And you can see the ratio of businesses created to entrepreneurs trained is pretty high. It's about 50%. And if you know anything about business creation, it's pretty low success rates usually in terms of actually launching a business. So 50% is pretty good. And then, of course, it's not only the creation of the business itself, it's the creation of the associated jobs. That is also a relatively cheap program, $850 per student. So that's basically the models and the results. Here's what we want to do going forward. So basically, our strategy has 5 components. At this point, we really want to start achieving scale. We've got some models that work. We know how to implement those models, and so now to achieve our institutional objectives, we've got to help others take them to scale. But we're not finished innovating. There's some things that we could do better, and so we're going to pursue innovation to address those challenges. We've got to do a better job on results and evaluation, and particularly, we measure job placement, but we want to do more. We want to see whether the youth stay in those jobs. We want to see whether they're good jobs. And we want to actually see whether employers and youth are satisfied with these programs. Also, as Andrew mentioned, we need to empower youth more in helping us design these programs. And finally, we have some specific issues for women and girls that we want to do better. So, in order to achieve scale, we have launched with partners, particularly IYF and other parts of our Inter-American Development Bank, a new initiative called NEO, New Employment Opportunities, or Nuevos Empleos y Oportunidades in Spanish. It works both ways, which is a partnership between us on the Development Bank side and IYF and 5 large companies who have come forward because they are interested in expanding the pool of labor with these skills. And those companies are Acostorados, the franchisor for McDonald's, big employer in the region, Caterpillar, Cemex, Microsoft, and Walmart. And together, we have pooled resources to create a region-wide partnership. Our goals are to train 1 million youth in 10 years, and that sounds ambitious, but we think we can actually overachieve on that one. Place at least 50% of them in jobs. At least 50% of those placed should be girls. 10 countries should adopt these high-impact strategies in their government programs, and we want to mobilize 1,000 local companies to help with the job placement and the funding and the training process. So that's the scale side, and we're We anticipate that other companies will join us, and we'll be launching those strategies in an initial set of countries very soon. On the innovation side, here are a few things we're going to try. First of all, we have to keep finding ways to demonstrate the value of these skills in an objective way. So we're going to try new kinds of certification processes. This is different from, an academic certification. It's a sort of a short-term training program certification, and we need ways for outside validators to show that these training programs are effective. We're going to make a lot more use of online platforms and social networking, both to do the job training itself, but also to do a better job in placing students in jobs. We found that particularly for at-risk youth, these are youth at risk for participation in violence and drug trade. Turns out mentoring and community service are highly effective in imparting these life skills. So we're going to do more of that. We're going to try new screening approaches for young entrepreneurs. So far, the way we've screened is to essentially ask them about their experience. Now we're going to do more kind of psychometric testing to show if they have the kind of innate qualities that make people effective entrepreneurs. We're going to link youth enterprises to larger value chains, and we're going to do micro-franchising as a way to create more business starting opportunities. And finally, we're going to work more on developing financial products that work for young entrepreneurs who don't have track records, who don't have collateral, and yet need financing. Results and evaluation, that's where we as a development institution really need to add value. So we're going to develop essentially systems for evaluating programs, indicators for measuring results, monitoring mechanisms, evaluation mechanisms, and as a public good, we're then going to give these systems to others that are scaling these programs. Youth empowerment, once again, we want youth to be not just the objects of this whole set of activities, but the subjects to help shape these programs. And finally, for girls. And you see that this picture is of the Vencer program, which is the Brazilian version of Aganar. This is the sports-based training program. And just to go back for a second, these life skills training programs, it's really very hard to impart life skills by a set of lectures to young people. And so what we found using this experimentation that Andrew was mentioning before is that if you use sports as the basis of your value system and as the basis of the interaction among the youth in the training program, or you use arts, the creation of art, the creation of theater and music, or more recently, if you use technology like gaming, you can impart the skills more effectively and more efficiently. So this is a way to bring in values from another set of activities and to create ways to practice these skills. So what you see is these girls, they're practicing soccer, and in the context of these programs, there are lessons that emerge. And I can tell you about one particular project I visited in Rio where the girls were practicing soccer, and the exercise was that girls who were good at soccer and girls who were poor at soccer had to play together and had to play a soccer game holding hands. So all of the girls were paired by twos, a strong player and a weak player. And there they were playing a game of soccer, the strong player dragging the weak player around the field, which you would suppose would create, tensions, frustration, but remarkably enough, what it did was actually show these girls what it was like to cooperate as a team, and also for people with some skills to help people with other skills. So in pursuit of a common goal, which in this case was winning a soccer game. So the idea was for different kinds of activities, some people were strong and some people were weak. In other activities, that was a different constellation. And so you could really benefit from this kind of joint activity. Now, for girls in particular, and this is, in retrospect, maybe not surprising, maybe we should have understood in the beginning, they have some specific challenges. For one thing, they face a lot of the household responsibilities, and they, in some cases, we had to deal with pregnancy. In other cases, they had responsibility for childcare. So even giving them the freedom to come to the training program in some cases was a challenge, and so we had to engage with the families in order to get support for the girl to participate in the program. So engaging with the families was an important thing. Also, there were issues of domestic violence, and there were issues of safety with respect to the girl traveling to wherever the training was. So having safe transport, safe spaces, and in some cases also separating the girls from the boys so they have a separate place to talk about their issues turned out to be very important. So as we go forward, we're going to try different ways of, in some cases, training girls alone in the program, just having programs that are just for girls, and in other cases, splitting the girls and the boys at certain parts of the program in order to be able to address girls' issues. So those are the things that we're going to try going forward. We're at a period now where we're very encouraged about the results of these kinds of activities, but we're not satisfied yet, either with the scale of what we're doing or with the way we do it. And so we will persist until we really have systemic impact around the region. Thank you so much. And now to make this concrete, we are fortunate to have with us both participants in the program, students in the program, and a manager of one of our program. And Maritza Vela from our youth team at the MIF will engage them in conversation.
Good morning. I first want to thank Alicia and Daniela for coming from Mexico, and Eduarda all the way from Brazil. A viagem foi longo, mas obrigada por estar aqui. I would like to start with Alicia, who is the coordinator of the Aganar program in Juarez. Aganar means to win, and Nancy talked a little bit about the methodology, so we would like Alicia to elaborate a little bit more on how it operates. So that would be the first question.
Nosotros operamos de una forma de 4 fases y nosotros trabajamos primero con la parte del deporte. Nosotros vamos en una forma de cancha, vida, trabajo, y en esta primera fase nosotros trabajamos con 6 pilares.
The program operates with 4 phases, and the first one is the sport in the field. There's also lectures, and then she's going to explain the values that are transmitted through the sport to the youth. The third phase is the technical training, and the fourth is the employment, the job practices that the youth engage in.
Nuestro principal reto en Ciudad Juárez fue darle a los jóvenes una oportunidad real, una oportunidad que fuera más allá de lo que ya existía en Juárez. Nuestro principal competidor fue el crimen organizado en aquel entonces.
She's going to tell us a little bit of the context they had in Juárez, and she says that the competition in Juárez was the trafficking, that it was very challenging for them to work there due to this.
Entonces nosotros decidimos darle unos entrenamientos con más alto nivel a nuestros jóvenes. Actualmente nosotros tenemos 12 entrenamientos técnicos.
Nowadays they have 12 training programs.
Enfermería, técnico herramientista, moldeo, electromecánico, administración, auxiliar educativo,
Mechanic, I'm trying to keep up. Mechanics, welding,
administrativo,
and business. Yeah, business administration.
junior chef,
Junior chef.
chofer de quinta rueda, driver.
Driver.
Truck driver.
5 wheels.
Ya. Técnico en arte, en danza, en música,
They also involve arts and dance and music.
porque lo que nosotros hicimos no fue solamente enfocarnos a lo que el mercado nos pedía.
They didn't just do what the market was demanding. They went beyond.
También nosotros queríamos saber y nosotros agregamos lo que los jóvenes querían hacer y sus talentos.
They also kept in mind what the youth were demanding and what their talents were to design the training programs.
Y en la tercer fase ellos van a hacer prácticas profesionales. Como Nancy dijo, en México no tiene tanto aceptación las prácticas profesionales, entonces es un reto en lo que nos hemos visto envueltos.
The kids have to do internships, and that is a challenge in Mexico because it's not a common practice.
Y en la cuarta fase nosotros damos un seguimiento. Nos importa saber dónde empezó el joven y dónde está después de varios meses y después de un año.
The last phase includes follow-up because they really want to know where the young person started and where they end up. So they do it throughout all the months of the program and after they're done.
Y pues bueno, los resultados en Ciudad Juárez han sido muy valiosos y tenemos una deserción negativa de 16% y un éxito de 84%.
So the dropout rate is 16% and the success is 84%.
Y nuestras tres principales metas son que el joven tenga un trabajo formal, que vuelva a la escuela o que emprenda un negocio.
The goals, the indicators are employment for the youth to start a business or to return back to school.
Y bueno, por último es la satisfacción que nosotros tenemos implementando a ganar, es que nos da la oportunidad de quedarnos en nuestra ciudad, ayudando a que jóvenes tengan una oportunidad real y salir adelante y decirles que Juárez está vivo.
I was talking to Alicia about the context in Juarez, and we asked her, why are you staying? Why don't you leave? And she said, no, everybody in Juarez wants to stay and to change the situation. They really want to make a difference with this youth. So Alicia, can you please tell us about the context in the communities where the youth live?
Bueno, en Ciudad Juárez, durante más de 30 años ha sido una ciudad migrante. Es la Ciudad de México que tiene más madres solteras. Por tal motivo, esto hace que las madres salgan a trabajar y los niños se queden solos.
Juárez is a big city in Mexico, and it has the highest rate of teen pregnancy, single mothers. So what this entails is that they have to go to work to support their children.
Estos niños fueron creciendo y cuando se vino toda esta ola de violencia y la parte de la guerra al narcotráfico por parte del presidente de México, eso explotó.
So this bomb exploded with the trafficking in the communities.
Entonces, nuestras comunidades, estamos nosotros al lado de la frontera con El Paso, Texas, y esto hace que Ciudad Juárez sea un cruce para el narcotráfico.
Juárez is very close to El Paso, Texas, to the crossing between the two countries, so that makes it a unique, it gives it a unique location for trafficking between the two countries.
La violencia se fue haciendo cada vez más grande y los juarenses nos empezamos a acostumbrar a este tipo de vida con muerte a nuestro alrededor, con drogas a nuestro alrededor, hasta que un evento desafortunado con jóvenes despierta al mundo entero, nos despierta a nosotros.
She's saying that violence got out of control, and the sad thing is that they learn to live with it. They learn to live with people dying around them. But there was a tragic event with youth that woke up the population, and they decided to do something about it.
el gobierno y el mundo llamó a Ciudad Juárez como un tsunami social, donde todos teníamos que evocarnos a salvar a nuestra ciudad y a salvar a nuestros niños, a nuestra gente, a nuestros ancianos, y todos, absolutamente todos, empezamos a trabajar por nuestra ciudad y a ganar es parte de ese trabajo.
She said that the government called it a tsunami, that they needed a tsunami to change the situation and to work not only against the crime, but for youth and for the elderly population. So that's what they started to do, and that's why she's involved with Aganar. And Alicia, can you please tell us, on a happy note, what about the employers? What do the employers think of the Aganar youth that they're getting? What do they say about them?
Aganar es una ciudad que siempre ha tenido empleo. Cuando viene la crisis, obviamente ese empleo baja y a raíz de la violencia también baja, pero cuando nosotros decidimos trabajar con Aganar nos dimos cuenta que no era solamente trabajar en que los jóvenes tuvieran esa oportunidad. Los empleadores quieren jóvenes que tengan otro tipo de capacidades. Ellos quieren que jóvenes vayan y tengan las herramientas para liderar, para respetar, que lleguen temprano, que sean puntuales.
Juarez doesn't have an unemployment issue. It has an issue of skills. So employers appreciate youth who have the tools to work, what we call employability skills, which entails arriving early, discipline, respect, and being able to communicate. That is what they want out of their employees.
Quiero recalcar algo y es muy importante en programas de empleabilidad. Nosotros estamos dándole a los empleadores un ahorro en su gasto de reclutamiento. Y eso es lo que nosotros estamos ofreciéndole a los empleadores. Estamos ofreciéndole un programa integral que ayude a que ellos tengan mejores trabajadores y por lo tanto mejor trabajo en la comunidad.
She's stating that the benefit to the corporations and the employers is that they are reducing the recruiting time. They're being able to hire youth in less time. And also I would add that it's youth that are reliable and would stay longer with them. Thank you so much, Alicia.
Gracias.
And now we're going to talk to Daniela. Daniela is, as you can, please stand up because you look very pretty. She decided to wear her uniform to show us. This is how she goes to classes, to practices, and to the hospital. Daniela used to live here in the US, in Colorado, and she decided to move back to Juarez. She comes from a family of 12. And my first question to you, Daniela, is why did you decide to go back to Juarez? What did you want to do with your life?
Okay. Bueno, pues yo decidí volver a Juárez porque creí que aquí, pues indocumentada, nunca iba a tener la posibilidad de ir a un colegio. Entonces fue que yo le dije a mis papás que yo me quería regresar a Juárez para estudiar, para tener un mejor futuro.
She decided to go back to Juarez to have a chance and to study, so that's why she went back to her parents. And what happened when you got there? What was your life like, and how did you find Aganar, and why did you join Aganar? ¿Qué pasó cuando volviste?
Okay. Bueno, pues volví y me encontré con la sorpresa que pues que ya no iba a poder estudiar por falta de dinero. Entonces fue algo muy triste para mí que tuve que quedarme en casa, pues haciendo cosas como ama de casa, con mi mamá ayudándole, y pues tampoco podía conseguir un trabajo porque en Juárez es que si no tienes un título, pues no tienes trabajo. Entonces, aparte que muy apenas sí terminé la middle school y allá los estudios de acá no son revalidados. Entonces tienes que pagar para revalidar tus estudios.
Mm-hmm. What happened to her when she went back is that she realized that her family couldn't afford to put her through school. So she was very disappointed and she stayed home helping her mom, doing nothing basically. and she couldn't get an employment because she didn't have any type of certificate, and that's a requirement for most jobs there. So that's when she decided to join Aganar. How did you hear about Aganar? And please tell us, what do you like best about the program?
Okay, pues me dijo mi prima y yo estuve muy contenta porque me dijo que era una oportunidad de esas que casi nunca se te presentan en la vida, ¿no? Entonces, que te iban a pagar todo, pues el transporte, los materiales, la carrera. Entonces a mí se me hacía muy bonito para que fuera verdad, pero sí es verdad.
Her cousin told her that there was this program that was free. She didn't have to pay for materials or transportation, and the training provided a certificate, and she thought it was too good to be true, but it is true, she says. So what do you like best about Aganar?
Lo que más me gusta es que somos como una familia. Hay chavos que tienen muchos problemas en casa, dificultades y pasan por muchas cosas feas. Entonces, cuando estamos ahí, jugamos, nos divertimos, se ríen, se olvidan de sus problemas, trabajamos en equipo, somos responsables, aprendemos a respetarnos unos a los otros, ya que somos diferentes, no somos todos iguales.
She says that what she likes the best is when they're together as a team, and that's when they're playing soccer, because a lot of them have many problems at home, but when they're together, they realize that the problems are not that bad, or perhaps their problems are better than others, and that they have a sense of community. They share it with each other, and they respect each other, she's saying, that she feels engaged and happy when she's with the other kids.
También, bueno, voy a contar una anécdota, ¿verdad? Siempre primero nos reuníamos en un salón y estudiábamos un poco, ya después salíamos a jugar. Recuerdo que había unos chavos, pues pandilleros, ¿verdad? Que siempre jugaban ahí. Entonces, como nosotros siempre les ganábamos la cancha, pero nosotros no éramos tan buenos porque apenas habíamos entrado al programa y ellos sí eran muy buenos porque lo único que hacían era jugar todo el día, ¿verdad? Entonces nos dijeron que si jugábamos contra ellos, ¿verdad? Entonces nosotros nos estábamos así como que, oh no, porque nos van a ganar, y nuestro facilitador nos dijo, no, dijo, vamos a jugar contra ellos. Usted nomás échenle las ganas y vamos a ver qué pasa. Entonces le ganamos, entonces nos estábamos muy sorprendidos, ¿verdad? Porque no es como si eres profesional o no, son las ganas que tienes.
She wanted to tell this story, and I see that a lot of you speak Spanish, so I'm sorry that you have to listen to me in two languages. She said that there was a gang playing in the soccer field where they were training, and they tried to beat them and get the field, but they were so good because they were playing there all the time. They were doing nothing but playing soccer, the gang members. So then they were scared to play with them, to ask them to play with them. And the facilitator, which is a crucial figure in this program, told them, no, why don't we just, ask them if they can play with us? So in the end, they played together. And did you say you win?
Sí, nosotros ganamos.
Yeah. She said they won, but it's because they had a lot of energy and they meant to win. So that teaches a lesson about life, right?
Ganamos.
When we were talking, you said that you had a few challenges going to the program. Would you mind telling us about it?
Sí. Pues en Juárez hay mucha violencia y pues la ves alrededor, en todas partes. Una amiga muy cercana a mí, que era como mi hermana, la quería mucho, pues a ella le tocó una mala situación, pues la balacearon y ella murió. Entonces, a lo mejor para ustedes no es algo normal, pero allá sí es muy normal que personas cercanas pues pasen a otra vida. Entonces, es muy fea la violencia allá, y los chavos, yo creo que ellos solamente, hay muchos que queremos salir adelante y que solamente estamos esperando por una oportunidad, una luz de un futuro mejor. Yo me levanto todos los días a las 5 de la mañana, voy a la escuela, Salgo a las 2 de la escuela, entro a las 3 al hospital. Salgo a las 8, pero me salgo una hora antes porque me da miedo caminar por la ciudad.
She told me that her best friend got shot, and she said, perhaps that's something shocking for you, but we're used to that there. But my best friend died. And then she said that her life is, her day-to-day is tough because she wakes up at 5 a.m. and she goes to school, and then she goes to the hospital for practices. And instead of leaving at 8, which is when the practice finishes, she has to leave at 7 just to be safe because there's daylight still. And tell us, so you're finishing the program very soon. Can you tell us when you're finishing and what you're going to do?
Sí, pues como todos ven, estudio enfermería porque me gusta ayudar a la gente así como a mí me están ayudando ahora mismo. Voy a terminar en enero. Y bueno, pues mi meta sería terminar, que sí voy a terminar obviamente, ¿verdad? Porque tengo muchas ganas. Y conseguir un trabajo. Y ya con ese trabajo, pues entonces ya puedo pagar lo que seguiría, lo que sigue después, que yo quiero terminar la carrera completa, que sería la licenciatura en enfermería.
She's going to be done in January, and she's certain that she will finish, first of all, and second, that she will find a job because she will have the certificate of the Red Cross. And then she says that she doesn't want to stop there. She wants to go forward to get a higher degree in nursing. Thank you so much for sharing with us. And now it becomes more challenging because we're doing Portuguese. Before starting, she said, please speak slowly. So, você também tem que falar devagar, tá bom? Okay. Okay. Eduarda, quando você chegou no dia domingo a Washington, você falou para mim que Washington é muito diferente da sua comunidade. Você poderia dizer como é que é diferente? Espera aí só um minuto. When she arrived in Washington on Sunday, she told me Washington is very different from where I live. So I'm asking her, how is it different? What is it like there? So she's going to tell us.
Meu nome é Eduarda, tenho 18 anos. O hostel aqui é muito diferente do Rio, porque onde que eu moro é totalmente diferente daqui. Aqui é muito lindo, muito bonito.
She says that she's 18 years old, and Rio, where she lives, is very different because Washington is very pretty. But Rio is the most beautiful city in the world. How is it different? Como é que é diferente?
Eu moro no Rio de Janeiro, moro numa comunidade, Vila Vintém, que tem tráficos, drogas, crianças, pessoas jovens grávidas, amigas minhas também, primos, meus amigos que já morreram, e aqui é lindo, maravilhoso.
She says that it's very different because there's a lot of poverty, there are drugs, and there's teen pregnancy, and she has cousins who didn't join the program, and she told me about one of them who is pregnant. And Eduarda. I call her Fernanda because she teams up with Fernando, so I get confused between the two names. Fale para mim como foi que você chegou a ganhar. O que estava acontecendo na sua vida e você foi para ganhar e como mudou tudo? Galpão, sorry. I'm asking her to tell me what was going on in her life and why did she join Aganar and how it changed her. Galpão, I'm sorry. I love the two projects with my whole heart. No offense. Ivonete sabe. Yeah.
Conheci o galpão através de uma amiga minha. E quando eu cheguei no galpão, eu olhei e vi que era diferente aonde que eu moro. E falei, é aqui que eu vou ficar. E depois, quando eu fui recebendo as aulas, conhecendo os professores, conheci a dona Ivonete, eu vi que era totalmente diferente, que ali mesmo eu conhecia a realidade da minha vida.
She says that a cousin of hers told her about Galpão, and she decided to go and take a look. She was very disappointed about life at that time, and when she got there and she saw the place and she started the training and she met Ibonechi and the teachers, she knew she wanted to stay there. O que você gosta mais do programa?
Eu gosto das dinâmicas que tem no Galpão Aplausos, que são as aulas de dança, circo, música, teatro, que isso é muito importante para nós aprendermos a respeitar o próximo, ter uma dinâmica, uma experiência fora, não só lá, ter respeito, o horário, ajudar o próximo, entender as pessoas e compreender também o próximo. É muito importante.
She says that what she likes the best about the program is that the methodology, because it uses music, arts, and theater, and circus acrobatics, so it's very complete. And she says that by doing this, she has learned that she has to be on time, discipline. She has learned discipline, and she has to work in a team, so teamwork is very important, and that she has to work hard for it. Eduarda, qual é seu sonho agora? Você que vai fazer? Você falou que você quer ser completa, que por isso tem que ser cantora, tem que falar. Qual é seu sonho e como acha que teria sido sua vida se não tivesse entrado no galpão?
Meu sonho é ser dançarina, mas não ser dançarina, ser completa, quando a Dona Ivonete ensinou nós lá. Dançar, fazer circo, teatro, percussão corporal, todos os tipos. Se eu não conhecesse o galpão, eu acho que minha vida ia ser muito diferente do que é agora.
I asked her what she thought about the program and how does she think her life would have been if she hadn't joined. And she says that her dream was to become a dancer. It still is. And you should see her dancing. She's amazing. But she said that something that she learned there is that it's not a matter of just being a dancer. She has to be a good human being. She has to be complete. And it's not just in the techniques of dancing and singing and acting. It's being a good person, a good human being. So her dream is to become a complete danzarina. And she says that her life would have been very different if she had not joined Galpão. Well, você não me falou como você acha que teria sido sua vida se não tivesse entrado.
Se eu não tivesse conhecido o Galpão, minha vida seria totalmente diferente, que esse projeto é muito importante para todos os jovens, não só para mim. E se eu não tivesse no Galpão, com certeza estaria junto com as minhas amigas, ou mulher de bandido, ou grávida, com filho, jovem, como as minhas amigas estão lá nesse momento.
She says that Galpão is not important just for her, it's important for all the kids who are in the program, because she's sure that if she hadn't joined Galpão, she would have been pregnant like her friends, or would have been dating bandido, as a trafficking, a gang member, or with a grown-up kid already, despite her young age. So she says it's very important, and she's very happy that she joined Galpão. Muito obrigada. Thank you. Obrigada por compartilhar.
Great. Well, some very compelling stories, and thanks for sharing. We're now going to shift gears a little bit here, and some cards are being passed out. We'd invite you to submit questions for any of the speakers here. Pass them once you've written them, I guess, pass them down to your left. Actually, can we go either direction? Yep, either direction to the end, and I'll sift through the cards, find the most challenging questions. While you're doing that, let me just maybe begin with a couple of quick questions here. Nancy, you have set out a very ambitious agenda here. I think it would be interesting to hear a little bit kind of how you see operationalizing, what you see some of the first steps for getting this going would be.
Thanks very much. And before answering that question, I just wanted to mention that if any of you are interested in actually seeing a performance of Galpao Aplauso, which is the group that Eduarda is part of, just go to our website, fomin.org, and it has a video of the performance as well as the report that I was talking about earlier. So yes, we've now set ourselves this task, this NEO initiative. It's a region-wide initiative, and failure is definitely not an option. So I can say a few words about how we're going to operationalize this. Basically, we are going to now create country-level partnerships, which are a combination of companies, big companies, and local companies, government entities, either central governments or sub-national governments, training organizations, NGOs, universities that care about these kinds of issues. So we're going to assemble all of the stakeholders and then really launch projects where we have a lot of buy-in. Now, really, I said before that the cost of these programs is fairly low, maybe an average of $1,000 per pupil, and that's low if you compare that to the cost of an entire secondary education. But we think we can lower that cost further if we achieve scale. So the ultimate goal is really to embed these models in public training programs and public secondary school education systems. So in order to do that, we have to convince governments that they work very well, and then help them actually change their education systems to accommodate these kinds of models. So a key partner in this is governments. The other thing we can do is for corporates, large corporates who have their own training programs, we can embed these models in their training programs and achieve scale on the private sector side as well. So we have to choose the initial countries that we're going to advance first. Mexico and Brazil will be two of those countries, but there are others in other parts of the region, smaller countries, which we'll be announcing over time. And then we create these programs. The other thing that's clearly going to be part of this process is that since we're trying to achieve scale, we not only have to find the best trainers or, work again with trainers that we already have worked with, we have to build their capacity to achieve scale and to train more students. So we're going to have to do some capacity building on the training side. And then the other thing I would say is that we really very quickly have to build these evaluation systems so that even as we start these programs, we collect the right data, we have monitoring systems that are strong in terms of actually collecting accurate data, and we find ways to evaluate impact. Thanks.
Yeah, thank you. I'm just wondering, are we able to go back this presentation to this first page? As the U.S. representative at the bank, I'm always looking for the angle of how any of these programs help the United States. And Nancy and the team have made a compelling argument about why we're involved in this kind of programming. Ultimately, it helps the economic and social development of these countries, which translate into a more stable region politically, hopefully, and certainly economically. But there's another component which is on the citizen security front. And if you look at that slide up there, I visited. That's a school that's run by a program called Grupo Ceiba, and they take kids who are who are in gangs or who are at risk of joining gangs, who for whatever reason have been pushed out of the more formal school system, and they give them vocational training over an 18-month period. They also teach them English, and so at the end of the 18 months, they're actually trained to work in call centers. And there's a lot of the training is IT focused. And there you see a class where you see a gentleman pointing to a screen there, and they get involved in web page design. The reason I mentioned that gentleman is actually in his 20s. He was, and he's a graduate of that program. He was a professional assassin. That's what he did when he was growing up as a teenager. And I met a number of other teachers who were involved in some of the most horrific crimes one can imagine. Setting aside for the moment some of the problems in the judicial system in Guatemala, this speaks, really for the need to intervene and work with these youth to keep them away from those gangs, which these days have grown into such capacity they have tremendous ability to impact our own national territory. And so if we're able to be effective in keeping them away from those gangs there, that ultimately has an impact on our own territory. Thank you.
Great. Well, we've got some good questions here, and I've tried to combine a few of them, and I think it's a nice spread for the different speakers here. I think the first one really cuts to the long-term heart of what the MIF is trying to achieve with these programs. And I'm combining two questions here. And the first is, how do you overcome the challenges of keeping these programs sustainable in the long run? What's the vision for sustainability? And I think combined with that, and maybe a part of that, is what is the investment of the 5 multinational companies that are making contributions to NEO? What's their role?
Though that question about sustainability is a core question for us, and really that's part of how you define a successful model, is how you create models that can be financed by some stakeholder in the set of activities. So these are training programs, so somebody has to pay for them. The optimal outcome of all of this experimentation and work is, as I said, if basically these training techniques and job placement techniques are embedded in education system, public education systems, so that money that's already being spent to educate young people have these much better outcomes in terms of job placement. So sustainability in this case doesn't mean it's entirely, the cost is borne entirely by the private sector. We define sustainability that way in much of our work. That's not the case in this work. In this work, what we're trying to do is lower the cost as much as possible. In other words, create an efficient program. The length of the program and the cost of the program is as short and small as possible in order to achieve the desired result, and then take that and scale it up. And by scaling up, you obviously reach more youth, but you also lower the per youth cost. And that's why in one of these slides you'll see that while our average training cost throughout all of these programs is low, $1,000 per youth, we did manage to transfer this model to a government. In that case, it was Argentina, and it was then incorporated into their public education system, and the per youth training cost was $400. So we really think you can get the cost very low as a step towards sustainability and scale it up. The second question was
the role of the 5 multinationals.
Oh, the role of the 5 multinationals. So far, just to be very concrete, we've raised something like $37 or $38 million, and the MIF has put in $12.5 million for this this joint partnership, and the rest comes from these companies, and their role is to provide part of the finance for the training program, to provide help with job placement services and with the design of the programs themselves so that they're effective for employers, and also to provide internships and also to place some of the students in jobs, as well as in some cases they're giving us some of their own curriculum for training that they've found to be useful in imparting these skills. And in some cases they're providing their training facilities so that we can use them, again, to lower the cost. So it's sort of a multi-dimensional partnership, which is why it's so valuable to have these large companies engaged in this process. And companies like Arcos Dorados and Walmart are big employers in the region. So it dramatically improves the prospects of placing the graduates of these programs.
Next couple of questions here. Several people were interested in how the MIF selects what countries they're going to establish these programs in. And I'm combining this with maybe a question that Alicia can respond to as well, is once the country has been selected and the program established, how is it publicized? How do youth find out about the existence of the program in the country?
In order to select the initial countries, we need the sort of convergence of interests on the part of the stakeholders. So we need countries where the companies want us to operate, since they're providing funding and other support. We need countries where the private sector part of the Inter-American Development Bank tells us the governments are receptive and therefore likely to incorporate these programs. And we need countries where we have employment prospects and trainers, on-the-ground partners to actually build these programs. So the point is, it's like a set of stakeholders, and we need the intersection of all of these things to start. So we're going to choose about, I don't know, we haven't really decided yet. So anywhere between 5 and 8 countries to start. As I said, we know that it's going to include Mexico and Brazil, and we want some small countries, and we want some of the poorer countries as well in the initial set. When we decide on the countries, we then go on the ground to build this partnership, which means that we're going to use our big companies as a channel to smaller companies. So we're basically going to have our company partners, our large company partners, help us engage with local employers. And we're going to find the training partners and also reach out to the universities and the NGOs that are in this space. And we're also going to do something that Andrew mentioned at the very beginning. We need to be very effective in our labor market surveys to identify where the jobs are for these training programs. So that's another way where we'll be reaching out for companies, because we will be asking companies what kinds of skills they want and what kinds of jobs they have.
Alicia, this question was directed to you. Some Juarez employers can be scared to hire people from certain backgrounds. Can you explain a little bit how you overcome that as an obstacle?
Bueno, eso pasa todo el tiempo. En Ciudad Juárez se volvió una ciudad desconfiada. Nos volvimos personas que nos encerramos en nuestras comunidades y hicimos bardas grandes para que la violencia no nos tocara, supuestamente. Entonces, cuando nosotros vamos y ofrecemos a ganar, nosotros les hablamos que los jóvenes que ellos van a contratar vienen de un proceso.
Alicia is saying that this trust is common in the city, and when they talk to the employers, they assure them that these youth have gone through a long process in the project so that they are confident on the type of young person they're getting.
Ellos tienen la seguridad que nosotros los estamos soportando, ellos saben de dónde vienen los jóvenes y el compromiso que el joven hace es con la empresa y con a ganar. Entonces ellos tienen esa confianza de que este joven no viene a hacer algo malo en su empresa.
The employer, that way the employer knows where the young person is coming from, because it has the credibility that the NGO, Fundación de la Frontera, and the certificate a ganar provides, so they know who they're getting.
Great. You're not done yet. A couple of questions here. First, what's the recruiting age? What's the age of youth that you are recruiting, and can you be too old to be in the program? And then how do you go about and actually do your recruiting? What are the most effective methods that you've found for attracting people into the program?
La edad es de 16 a 30 años. Nosotros subimos un poquito la edad porque en las condiciones de Juárez necesitábamos darle oportunidades a jóvenes más grandes.
The age is 16 to 30, and I immediately looked at Paul when I heard that, because who is the project director of Aganar, because we're supposed to target only youth until 25, but that is okay. We are aware that we need to make exceptions when there's need, and that is the case in situations like Juarez and in rural areas especially.
The second part to the question is, how do you recruit? What are some of the effective, and what are the challenges in recruiting people into the program or attracting them?
Nosotros trabajamos con organizaciones de la sociedad civil en Juárez. Ellas hacen la convocatoria y ellas juntan un grupo. Luego ellos pasan por un proceso de entrevistas y un proceso donde nosotros queremos conocer su vida y el compromiso que ellos pueden incorporar al programa.
The Fundación works with grassroots organizations that are in the communities who bring the groups, and they conduct surveys to make sure the youth that are joining the program are committed to joining it and finishing it.
Eduarda, we have a question for you. How do your peers in Brazil react to the success that you're having in this program, and do you face any challenges because of it?
Eles acham muito diferente e ficaram muito felizes. E ficam muitas pessoas mandando e-mail falando, caramba, o que tá fazendo aí? Eu fico falando, dança. Aí eles, caraca, arrasou. Eu nem acreditei, eu pensei que era mentira. Eu falei, é verdade.
Então eles não ficaram ciumentos?
Não, ficaram felizes.
She has very good friends. Because she says that they were very happy, and they sent emails to her saying, what are you doing there? This is amazing. Is it true? And she said, yeah, it is true. I cannot believe it, but it's true. I'm dancing and I'm very happy.
This question, maybe, Elisa, I'll ask you to respond to first, but maybe it would be interesting to have the perspective from Daniela and Eduarda as well. It's about attracting and retaining young women in the program. So specifically, are there any specific measures that you take to attract women into the program? And is there a difficulty in retaining them more so than the boys or the men in the program?
Para nosotros es muy importante que el programa sea equitativo, que tengamos mujeres y que tengamos hombres. El principal reto es que las mujeres lleguen y se visualicen jugando fútbol. Ese es nuestro principal reto. Pero una vez que ellas llegan, ellas aceptan el modelo.
The first challenge is to have women join the program and visualize themselves, see themselves playing soccer. But once they do it, it works.
Lo que los retos que nosotros vamos enfrentando con las mujeres es que hay comunidades en Ciudad Juárez que hay mucho machismo, que los hombres no visualizan a sus hijas o a sus parejas teniendo un empleo o haciéndose cargo de cierta parte de los gastos de la casa. Y la otra parte, otro reto que tenemos es, las mujeres tienen muchos hijos. Tenemos un caso de una chica que tiene 30 años y que no aceptábamos antes más grandes, y una me dijeron, es que está una chica y la tienes que aceptar, pero tiene 30. Les dije, no podemos, me regañan en Washington. Y me dijeron, pero es que tiene 10 hijos, y yo, ok, sí.
Another challenge is cultural. It's that there is machismo in Mexico, a lot of machismo, not only in the communities, in all Mexico. So,
Yeah.
But especially in the communities, a lot of the fathers and brothers do not accept to have a woman producing and working, providing at home. And the other challenge is that women have a lot of children. And she said that there was a case of a girl who was 30 years old, so she wanted to join the program, and they said no, because in Washington we say no. But then when she was told that the girl had 10 kids, she said, gotta accept her.
Y entonces el reto es que nosotros tenemos que ir acompañándolas. Nosotros tenemos que hablar con los papás, que hablar con los hermanos, tenemos que ser confiables para ellos y decirles, mira, tu hija tiene la oportunidad de tener escuela, va a tener la oportunidad de tener un futuro mejor. Y cuando nosotros aceptamos a una chica que ya tiene una pareja, nosotros pedimos conocer a la pareja y que él esté de acuerdo de que ella va a estar dentro del programa. Y él tiene que firmar y tiene que acompañarnos. Y la única forma es acercándonos a la familia y acercándonos a su entorno.
They have had to reach out to the families to provide the girls support, in the sense that they will talk to the parents and assure them that the girls will be safe and that they are in a good program indeed. So that is something that we've learned in many programs. The family is important, and when the girl has a partner, they ask for the partner to come to the program so that they get to know him as well.
Thanks. I'm just conscious of the time here. Do we have time for one more question here? And I might cheat and combine two real quickly. One question is that noticed on the slides that 45% of the employees are located on the ground in the countries in which you're working. And the question is, are these local employees, or are they foreign? And if they're foreign, how do you develop their ability to work in the local community?
No, they're local employees, and in the Inter-American Development Bank, there are international employees which work in Washington, and then there are local employees which work in country offices. Every country has a country office from the bank, and in that country office, we have what are called MIF specialists, which are the on-the-ground employees. So we are part of the offices of the Inter-American Development Bank, but we hire our staff locally, and that's just a key part of doing this work. This work really can't be done from Washington. There have to be people on the ground who can find the right partners to implement, who can monitor progress, who can give feedback back to Washington so we can have this adaptive, iterative process to improve things if they aren't going well.
Great. Well, maybe on that note, I'll close the questioning. I'm sure that if folks have individual questions, that people would be happy to remain for a few minutes and answer them. Any closing words?
No, just thank you all for attending. Encourage you to continue to follow the work of the MIF, and we will try the rest of this year and into the future to also engage with the Hill. I think it's important for American taxpayers through their elected officials to understand how the United States government is investing limited funds in the organization like the IDB and the MIF, and the kind of how that translates into the interest of the United States in the long run. Thank you.